Hey everyone, this is Ben from RotoGold.com. I'm bringing you a fantasy basketball draft today from Yahoo. It's one of the Yahoo Pro Leagues, so it'll be keeping people honest. There is something on the line here. It's not just gonna be one of those mock drafts that you can jump into and if you're a Laker homer, pick Powell, Kobe, Steve Nash in your first 3 rounds. Everyone here should be kind of held to their guns. This is a rotisserie league. For RotoGold. That is kind of what we specialize in. But you can see over here in the top right corner, we got the positions and then the 9 categories of field goal percentage, free throw percentage, 3-pointers made, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, and then turnovers is a negative. Up here, we'll be able to track where the draft positions are. Our spot is the 3 spot, so I'll go over the different picks there. And then down here in the bottom right it'll be a chat, but it'll also function as seeing who other people have picked. So throughout this whole thing, I'm just going to run through my thought process, what I think about other people's picks, and just kind of discuss the game as a whole. We ended up in the 3 spot, like I said. I went ahead and preloaded the rankings from our website, the top 100, so that we can keep track of where those are. I won't exactly pick them. If guys rank 9th and I have 9th pick, I should pick him. I won't exactly do that. It'll be more of, do I think that I can get value there? Let's say Serge Ibaka is sitting there at the 9. If I was picking at 12, if I was picking at 9 and I thought that he could come back around, I might instead go for a guy like Paul George if he's there. But I'll explain my reasoning as we go. Sitting in the 3 spot, it gives us a lot of choices. Those choices can all kind of disappear if one of the first 2 guys ends up not picking Kevin Durant or LeBron James. Those are by far the 2 best players in this game. But after that, the next 3 are very solid. They just have larger question marks. For my sake, for the website, we ended up going with Chris Paul as the number 3 player, and that is who I would pick if it came down to it. But James Harden and Steph Curry are both extremely good. They score a lot more than Chris Paul, but you don't get the same kind of just assist and steals dominance that you would out of CP3, plus his percentages are just off the chart. They all have improved teams this year, which normally you would think kind of hurts them, especially for guys like Harden and Curry who are pure scorers. But for a guy like Chris Paul, having J.J. Redick and Jared Dudley in town is going to be just a major improvement. No, I'm not trying to rag on Caron Butler, but that's just going to be a huge difference for a guy who wants to spread the ball around as much as possible. James Harden, on the other hand, he had an incredible year last year. Anybody who ended up with him at the end of the first round, or God forbid if you did your draft before the trade happened, and you ended up getting him in like the 2nd or the 3rd, he just went off. Having Dwight Howard in town, it makes things a lot more difficult. There's going to be a lot of plays where he would have gone in and scored or gotten to the line, where they're going to defer to Dwight. It'll probably help his field goal percentage some, which was probably his weakest category. I mean, except for blocks, but he's a guard. But that fact that he's going to have to defer to Dwight and the offense is going to go more through him, it's going to end up hurting his stock. He's not going to repeat what he did last year. At least that's my opinion. With all these things that I'm saying, feel free to leave comments on the site or on the YouTube channel so that we can, I'll be more than happy to discuss it with you. I think it makes everybody better when you get a good, healthy discussion going. And then before I get through those 3, Steph Curry's the last one. He, again, was just out of his mind last year. Probably the most exciting moment I had during the NBA season was watching that game when he played against the Knicks in Madison Square Garden. he was just out of his mind. Having someone like that on your team can really help, but that's also a murky situation now. Bring in a guy like Andre Iguodala and have Harrison Barnes kind of start to come around, and now Jarrett Jack is out of town, so that helps. He'll be more free to be a point guard, but there's going to be a lot of people who need time. I don't think it'll cut him down so much, but the other downside to him is that he is an injury risk. He played all of last year, which was somewhat of a miracle. His ankles just, for some reason, are made out of glass or something, to where he's going to be, he more than likely will miss time. You could probably say the same for Chris Paul, but I think the reason it comes down to CP3 for us here at RotoGold is that he's just a complete contributor. He contributes across the board. He rebounds like Harden and Curry. He can score like them. You'll see the stats here in this section are the stats from last year. Chris Paul, he did miss 12 games going off that injury-prone thing, but he still had incredible numbers. So he underperformed in points, but he can still score 15, 17 a night, and then those assists are it's just too much. He's going to lead the league as long as he stays healthy. And then when it comes to steals, he's great. Just overall great contributor. Again, we'll see what the first two guys do. I think it's Kevin Durant or LeBron over Chris Paul any day. I don't think I'll have to make that decision, or I don't think I'll get to make that decision. But yeah, and Durant over LeBron is our choice. You can read about that everywhere. But for the roto factor, Kevin Durant just he contributes everywhere. Look at that. He had over 100 steals and over 100 blocks. That's amazing in itself. But then the fact that he's the league's leading scorer, makes threes at a pretty solid rate, rebounds, and has incredible percentages. He's a can't miss. It's a little worrisome that Russell Westbrook is going to be out for a while, but he's gonna be double teamed all day. But he's got so much talent that a double team doesn't mean anything. Here goes the countdown. I've turned off the sounds so that you guys don't have to deal with the atrocious sound effects from the Yahoo site. But let's see how these first couple picks go. And we'll go ahead and make our selection. As predicted, Durant goes off the board, and then LeBron. So, yeah, we don't get to have too much fun. I think I've talked about this enough then. We're going to go ahead and side with Chris Paul. It's a good start to the lineup. We'll look to get some big men coming around the other way. But this sets us up to kind of dominate in assists and steals. So I like that as a start. I'm extremely happy with that. And then, so far everyone's kind of following the rankings that we have set up. Just kind of straight 1, 2, 3, 4. Looking down here at where we'd predictably have guys come back around, I don't think we'll have to make the decision of Larry Sanders or Dwayne Wade. Having a guy like Mike Conley come back to us would be good. Actually, you know what? This did not load the RotoGold rankings. So I'm just going to have to do them by memory here. Oh, maybe it did. Yeah, because Anthony Davis isn't listed up there for them. That's all right then. So, that would be a surprise. Paul George coming off the board at 5 over Steph Curry. He had an incredible year last year. He got paid, definitely, this summer. But I just don't think he has the talent to keep up with a guy like Curry. You get rid of the fact that he isn't injury prone like him, so that's a positive. But at the end of the day, we're just going for numbers. And Curry's numbers are better than Paul George's numbers. If Curry misses pretty much the entire season, then Yeah, I can see that pick making sense. I don't think I ever would, though. Um, Kevin Love coming off next. He's probably one of my favorite big men this year. He is, according to the rankings. Um, I'm not too worried about the fact that he's going to be injured. Uh, he put together just an incredible second half, or not a half, but when he did come back healthy, he was pretty much unstoppable. Um, so I'm a big backer of him. He can put up pretty much top 5 numbers if he stays healthy, and that's something I'd rather bet on. One of the big debates in the first couple rounds is whether or not you go for a stable team or a team that is high upside. I think for the first 2 picks, you can go for the stable. Having Kevin Durant or LeBron to anchor your team makes your decisions a lot easier. But if you're having to select a guy like Al Jefferson in the first round, he's very good, but you know what you're getting, and it's not as good as the guys who are getting Durant or LeBron. So at that point, it's better to select a guy like Kevin Love, in my mind, who has the ability to go off, or a guy like Anthony Davis, probably a better comparison. He has a much more likely chance of finishing in the top 5 than Al Jefferson does, and I'd rather have that chance than just know that I'm going to be getting 19 and 10 or whatever it is that Jefferson averaged last year. Anthony Davis came off the board pretty darn early as well. There was a run on big men going Gasol, Aldridge, Davis, and Ibaka down here. I think Gasol went a little early. He is just an extremely solid player, but I think I would rather have Anthony Davis over him for that same reasoning of him just having a much higher upside. If you've seen him this preseason, it's been mouth-watering. He's been just out of control. Again, it is the preseason, so don't put too much stock in it, but I'd rather have that at the end of the day. Carmelo came off the board too. Having a pairing of Serge Ibaka and Carmelo Anthony here at the turn, that's pretty darn good start. Serge Ibaka, his real downside is the fact that he's just not going to score a lot. But having all those blocks and everything, you're going to at least compete in the blocks category, and you can't ask for much more than that. But being paired with a guy like Carmelo, whose main attribute is the fact that he scores, it really offsets that downside. And in Roto, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for guys who complement one another, who can. If one guy, like Chris Paul, if he assists, now we're going to look for a big man to help even that out. Now we've got a tremendous guards stats lines, and then we've compared that with solid big men lines. Unfortunately, the big men just keep coming off the board with Al Horford and Al Jefferson coming off. Derrick Rose goes. I'm not a huge proponent of his, but I would have taken him at the 22 spot, again, for that high upside. But hopefully we can find a big man here. I wouldn't mind a Dirk or a Larry Sanders. The other choice would be to take a guy like Mike Conley or John Wall, and just never have to worry about picking up another point guard for the rest of the draft. I probably wouldn't mind that. Being able to just say I'm dominating this is pretty darn solid, and I like the big men that come a little bit later a lot more than I like the point guards that come later. There are some steals to be had in guys like Goran Dragic, and I think Kyle Lowry is going to be pretty darn good this year. But guys like Jonas Valanciunas, I'm going to butcher that name all year long, but I'm a big fan of his down here at 52. Guy like, there's Kyle Lowry, like I was talking about before. The other Toronto big man, Amir Johnson. Derek Favors is in here. All those guys, I'd much rather have them. They're a lot more high upside than a guy like, Dragic is pretty high upside, but it's a lot better than getting some of the really late point guards. So I think coming in here, there's 3 more picks in front of us. I think the 3 guys that we're targeting are Dirk, Mike Conley, and Larry Sanders. I wouldn't mind ending up with Dwayne Wade, but I don't think I'd really want to. Ricky Rubio coming off to Sweet J2. He had Steph Curry before. That's a pretty good pairing. He's going to have a lot of trouble fighting for the field goal percentage spot, though. Even though Curry is so lights out, Ricky Rubio just destroys you there. So we got just 2 more picks coming. At the end of the day, we're going to get one of these 3 guys. Dwayne Wade, probably one of the best players in the last 10 years. It's just those injury concerns that really get me. I don't think I would take a chance on someone who's so obviously kind of deteriorating. It would be nice to fill up that shooting guard spot, though, but around the turn, it wouldn't be so bad to pick up a guy like Nicholas Batum, who is kind of like the roto superstar, being able to contribute in every single category. But being able to, I think here I'd rather have a guy like Mike Conley or Dirk. Dirk mainly because he's going to score in bunches, and that's probably one of Chris Paul's lesser attributes, is the fact that he doesn't score too much. He can go for 20 and 10 a night, but for the most part it's going to be more like 15, 16, 17. All right, so it went Batum and then Westbrook, a bit surprisingly. I wouldn't have picked him there. It's going to come down to either Dirk or Mike Conley. It's pretty tough, but I think in this case I'm going to go with Dirk. We did rank him higher. The reasoning behind that just being he seems to be healthy, and he's one of the best players on the planet when he is. I don't think it's that much downside at this spot. I think you're getting just a ton of value, and like I said, now we've got a point guard and a power forward, kind of the traditional way of dominating a league. You're able to put together a pretty balanced roster with, now we've got a guy who's going to kill it in assists, a guy who's going to be very solid in rebounds. Neither is going to detract from our scoring, and we've got field goal percentage pretty much locked up because they both shoot free throws at a very high percentage, and they shoot a lot of them. So I like where we're set up on the Westbrook pick, but him going just before us. I think late second round is a little too early for him. He's going to return probably third round value, but second round, that's tough. He's going to be missing an entire month. It just seems like too much to overcome in order for that to be worth it. Taking a guy like Mike Conley, who you know is going to be there in and out every night, and he might not score as much as Russell Westbrook, but he's not going to just destroy you in field goal percentage. It seems a lot more dependable than taking a guy that you're going to be worried about ever showing up for the first month. So Larry Sanders and then Nikola Vucevic came off the board. That player previously picked Kawhi Leonard. He's obviously looking for young guys with a lot of talent. Vucevic is a very solid player, but I don't know that I would put him up there. So I think this is pretty solid time to pick up Mike Conley. We could also go for Powell. If we wanted to pick up another big man, he's due for a revival now that Dwight's gone. Chris Kamen's going to be taking up that center spot, which is a little annoying, but I think I would much rather be taking Mike Conley and just never have to worry about assists or steals again. Those 2 categories will be pretty much locked up, and then we can focus on the other ones. The downside to picking him is that our field goal percentage is going to be pretty low, seeing as how Dirk doesn't really shoot from the field that well, and Chris Paul is very solid, but he's not going to shoot enough to offset these 2 guys. But I'm going to go ahead and take Conley, very solid player, and I'm very happy with how this draft has been going so far. If you've ever read on the ESPN page, Matthew Berry, the talented Mr. Roto, he is a big proponent of the point guard and power forward combination because they just so perfectly offset one another. For a rotisserie league like this, It's been a very solid pairing so far. We've got a good start. The only things again that we're worried about would be field goal percentage, but we can go ahead and target a guy like, we can look here, anybody who shoots over 500. Brooke Lopez, Tony Parker is just out of his mind from the field. Chris Bosh would probably be the premier guy. Blake Griffin I've seen come around at that spot, the fourth round, before, solely because his free throw percentage is so bad, and our free throw percentage is very bolstered, so he would actually probably be a great fit for this team. Paul Millsap would probably be my other topic, and David Lee, probably not so much, just because we want a big man who can block, but we can't be too picky at this point. Let's see, who else has come off since we made the pick? Ty Lawson went next. Probably going to be, all the premier point guards have now come off the board. A guy, if I was looking for one right now, definitely would go Eric Bledsoe over anyone. He looks to have just an absolutely mind-boggling year this year with how much opportunity he has, and I've spent the last few years of my life following the Clippers as a team, just because in college I'd be able to go and with some friends and sit in the VIP tickets where you'd have to pay a few $100s for a Laker game, and we'd be able to go for like $25 a seat. Following them though, Eric Bledsoe has got the talent. There's no doubt about that. He's just always been behind the best point guard in the league. Now that he's got his own team, even if he has to play it as shooting guard, he's just so talented that it's going to come through, and he's definitely going to be a dominant force this year. And I'm sorry for all of this stream of consciousness. I just want to kind of keep it going. We'll see, kind of talk you through everything that's going through my mind, even though it's a little ADD at times. Tim Duncan and Pau Gasol, the Western Conference old team All-Stars, came off the board in back-to-back picks. Wow, it's really running through here now. It's a shame to see Brooke Lopez, Chris Bosh, Tim Duncan, Pau Gasol all leave the board. We are looking for big men, but there's still so many good ones. DeMarcus Cousins, I think, is good for a bounce-back year. He was being picked top 25 last year, and even though he returned top 40 value, which isn't exactly what you're looking for, he has the talent. He's the best player on that team by far, and he's probably a top 20 player in the league. And putting together the fact that now he's the star of a team and he's got the most opportunity, the most talent and the most opportunity on a team is usually just a killer combo. The only reason I wouldn't really target him on this team is that, like I said before, we're a little lacking in field goal percentage, and he is not going to help with that. He just does not understand the fact that he is 7 feet tall and able to bully everyone when it comes to getting close to the basket to score. He likes to settle for those little short mid-range jumpers. And he sometimes struggles to finish near the basket, but he's just such a physical specimen that it doesn't really matter. He can create his own baskets off of putbacks and things like that. So while I really like his opportunity this year, I don't know that he would be a great fit for this team. Again, the people that we'd be targeting here, I'm going to move him over here in this queue just so we can keep track of him, would be Joakim Noah, I'm not holding my breath for that. I don't think he'll come around. David Lee, Paul Millsap, Blake Griffin, and that's about it. All the other big guys got taken off. I would definitely be targeting Jonas on the. I could see myself taking him here at the end of the fourth, but it'd be preferable to see him at the beginning of the fifth. I think we could get him there. In the meantime, I would pick a guy like Jeff Green over in this fourth spot, just because it's a lot less likely for for him to come back around here at the fifth round than it is for Jonas to get there. I don't think we need to target a guy like Drew Holiday or Kemba Walker or even Eric Bledsoe. They're all very good players, but and I'd be very happy to have Eric Bledsoe on the team, but I just don't think that's what this needs. I think our assists are more than made up for, and his other main thing is going to be steals, and we have pretty much the NBA's steals leaders here. So David Lee went off the board. Jay's team was not very happy about that, as you can see down here in the chat. And then Dwight Howard and Joakim Noah. So we lost two of our guys that we were targeting here. But somebody did go ahead and bite the bullet and take Dwight. I'm not a big fan of him in Roto. It's so much of a liability. Ooh, and someone went and picked Andre Drummond. Very, very high upside, but him and Dwight are so draining on your free throw percentage that it makes it just it makes it so much more difficult on yourself. There's no need to do that where you're essentially handicapping yourself in a single category. It just doesn't really make much sense. Kobe being picked by Cool Team, the people who were originally the 6th spot, and I think they ended up with Curry. Curry and Kobe, that's quite a combination. Kobe, recently news came out that he has been cleared to play. I'm more on the conservative side of that. I don't think he's just because a doctor says he's okay to play, I don't think he's going to rush it. Now, it won't be dragged out like the Derrick Rose thing was, but I do believe that he's not going to just rush into it. He understands that there's a lot more to his career than just being ready for a meaningless season opener. He wants to compete for a few more years at least. So I just don't see him coming back that fast. Now, I think in the 4th round, that's some pretty solid value. So I commend that team for picking him up, especially when you're comparing him with a guy like Steph Curry. It's the pick's coming back around now. We've got 2 guys that we're targeting. I think Eric Bledsoe is going to go off here, and maybe Kemba Walker. It would be best if we ended up with Blake Griffin, I think, but I can't make their decisions for them. I'm kind of talking myself into the Eric Bledsoe pick just because he's so high upside, but I just can't do it. I think we've got all of the stats that he contributes covered, and I don't think that he's going to bring that much. Blake's been going off the board really late recently just because, partially because his free throw percentage, but also because he's kind of talked about reducing the role a little bit just because Doc's in town and they're actually trying to win now instead of just dunk all the time. But I don't see how I can pass up on a guy like Blake who's going to score in bunches, he's going to rebound in bunches, and he just contributes all over the board. I'm going to go ahead and pick him. We've got some very solid forwards and point guards in place. I think if it comes back around, we might just go ahead and take Bledsoe. He's probably one of the premier shooting guards in my mind, since it's such a shallow position. And I'd much rather have him than him or Klay Thompson than a guy like, I think there's a definite tier there between those two and a guy like George Hill or Bradley Beal. It's a pretty significant drop-off, so I'd much rather take a chance on an Eric Bledsoe type. I don't know if he'll come back. Again, these aren't the rankings the way that people are seeing them. If I sort here by average pick, it'll show mainly how people are selecting. It's a good thing to keep your eye on because, like I'd said before, trying to get Jonas come back around. Eric Bledsoe got taken right before us, so it's not going to we don't have to make that decision. But keeping an eye on the average pick thing, we know that Jonas is pretty far down here at 70-some. So we do run the chance of having him come back to us in the 6th round. I think he's got so much upside that he he can justify this pick being selected fifth. And Klay Thompson has too many question marks in my mind as to whether or not he's going to be getting playing time, and his real contribution is the three-pointers made, which I think there's a lot more guys that you can pick up later who can contribute in that. Guys like Danny Green or Kyle Korver, even if you're desperate. I'm going to go ahead and take Jonas. We're big proponents of him here at RotoGold. His numbers post the Bargnani injury were just incredible, and now that Bargnani's out of town, it's his show. So going to go ahead and take him just on a whim. He's going to help shore up that field goal percentage without really knocking us down anywhere else. Really like the start so far here. We got 5 picks in, and we've got guys who contribute in pretty much everywhere without detracting from most other places. We'll do very well in assists and steals because of our point guards. We'll definitely compete in points since we've got Dirk and Blake at good values. Our free throw percentage, we have big men who can shoot from the free throws. Blake Griffin cannot. He's pretty big deterrent, but the rest of the guys are very solid, so they'll help accommodate that. And then field goal percentage, like I said, we're starting to come back in now that we've picked up some solid big men who are able to play close to the basket, not jack up threes. But yeah, I think we've got some high upside, some very solid values, and some pretty solid contributors, just very consistent. Jeff Teague coming off. I don't think we've seen any really strange picks so far. Detroit had back-to-back picks up here. Josh Smith, followed by Brandon Jennings. That's a situation I'm kind of just trying to distance myself from. It's funny to see, the Pistons were pretty terrible last year, and now we've seen Andre Drummond, Josh Smith, Brandon Jennings all come off early. They're definitely a talented team individually, but I don't see myself trying to jump in there without knowing how it's going to shake out first. There's just too much to go around, too many mouths to feed with not enough to go around. Jennings is probably the safest bet in my eyes, just because he's the point guard. He's going to make decisions. He can score when he wants to, whereas having guys like Josh Smith, Andre Drummond, Greg Monroe, all in the same area is just a recipe for disaster. It's really a recipe for disaster for Josh Smith, I think. He already has really questionable shot selection, and now he is going to try, if he tries to get to the basket, there's going to be 2 huge guys just kind of standing there clogging up the paint. So it makes him almost forced to take those terrible mid-range shots, which is really bad for fantasy owners. I mean, mid-range jumpers in general are the worst shot in basketball, just because you aren't getting that third point and you aren't close to the basket. But when you can't shoot like Josh Smith, it's just a terrible combination. Derek Favors coming off now to the Sweet J2 team. Let's see what their team looks like. I feel like he's made some pretty good picks so far. Steph Curry, Ricky Rubio. He was not the guy. Kobe and Curry did not get paired. I misread the order, apparently. Curry, Rubio, Duncan, Millsap, and Favors. Pretty solid. Good assist numbers, good steals. And then some really solid big men. Little skeptical of Tim Duncan this year. It's tough to be, just because he's such a solid. He's always been so consistent throughout his career. But the fact that he rests so much, it is a little worrisome, and his body's just deteriorating. I saw an interview with him a couple days ago where he was talking to ESPN and saying, they asked him, how many years do you have left in you? And he said, well, I got 2 more years left on my contract. I hope to do that. Not exactly a ringing endorsement for a guy looking to shine in fantasy basketball. There's a mini run on point guards here. Glad we got ours when we did. It went Drew Holiday, George Hill, Jose Calderon, Goran Dragic. We can take a look at who's remaining there. Kyle Lowry, I'm a big fan of. As I'd mentioned before, he was just really, really good prior to all of his injury woes. I don't know if you can exactly discount that because he's very injury prone, but the fact remains that pretty much the entire season, when you looked at it from a rank perspective in the Yahoo leagues, who has contributed the best per game for rotisserie, Kyle Lowry was up there pretty much the entire time that he was injured because he came out of the gates last year just storming, putting up extremely solid numbers, got injured, and then his per game still really stacked up. From those 4 point guards that got selected, I think I don't know what way we had them ranked. We can go ahead and bring it up. We had it as Dragic, Hill, or Drew Holiday, Dragic, Hill, Calderon. A little different order, the way that people selected them, but I can see the justification for each. Calderon is going to be, he's just kind of your rotisserie stud, with given how good his percentages are and everything. Let's go ahead and bring all the players back up so we can keep track of that. Calderon's going to be your rotisserie stud, but guys like Goran Dragic and Drew Holiday are going to contribute more in individual categories. Another big debate within the rotisserie game is whether or not you select a person who can contribute across the board, like a Jose Calderon or a Nicholas Batum, or if you take a guy who specializes, like a Goran Dragic or a Mike Conley, because they contribute in assists and steals, and that's pretty much they're in some other places, but that's their main things. Whereas Calderon's going to not hurt you anywhere. A lot of the time, I'd prefer to do these guys are specialized in these categories, and then we'll find people who are specialized in the other categories to help complement each other. I think at the end of the day, you're able to balance it out, but it's just something to keep your eye on. Here at the turn, the Kings selected Ryan Anderson and Rajon Rondo, two very high upside guys. Ryan Anderson, the New Orleans situation is also a little sketchy just because they have a lot more talent now, a lot more than they're used to. But having a guy like Anthony Davis in the middle is kind of a three-point shooter's dream. Davis is able to pass so well that he'll be able to find Anderson when he's open. So I like him as one of the late three-point shooters. Well, not exactly late, but mid-range three-point shooters you can pick up. He'll pretty much dominate that category for you. And then Rajon Rondo, it's a bit skeptical there at 60-some. Just because there's a lot of talk of the Celtics not exactly rushing him back. They don't have much to compete for this year, and next year's draft is so eye-opening that there's no real rush into trying to bring him back. They'd rather he be completely healthy. I think the best case scenario for a Rajon Rondo owner would be that he got traded once he came back, just because first off, the Celtics supporting cast is not good to say the least, but it'll give them a lot more reason to play him and not put these fake injuries and stuff. Not that teams are faking injuries, but they might be slow to bring them back just so they can compete a little less. I'm not a big fan of the Rajon Rondo pick, but I can see the justification. That's probably the highest upside player this year, given how little you have to pay for it. Let's see here. We got 3 more picks in front of us. the areas that we're going to try and concentrate on are probably, we need a 3-point shooter at some point. We need to pick up some of those. And we can do with some more big men. Our scoring isn't exactly shallow, but I am eyeing a guy like Jeff Green coming around here. He's another very high upside. He's the show in Boston. There's no doubt about it. The only downside there being that he is not a very efficient scorer. So I think what it would come down to would be either David West or him if we get to make that decision. West being a lot better at field goal percentage. And yeah, it looks like we're not going to have to make that decision anyways, just because Jeff Green went off the board. Bradley Beal being selected next. David West is pretty much a slam dunk here, not to make a joke of football reference, or excuse me, basketball references. I have the Packer game on in the background just because I am a huge Packer fan. We have a cat named Lambo, just to show the dedication. But I think West is good here just because I think we're still a little lacking in field goal percentage, and he is very solid. And there's not much competition. The Pacers' backcourt is a little muddled now that Danny Granger's back, but there's no doubt that David West and Roy Hibbert are the guys in the paint. So I think this is a pretty easy pick. The only other selection would be Nikolai Pekovic, but I don't like the fact that Kevin Love is now in the middle there as well. Going to go ahead and take David West. We've got 4 more picks in front of us, so I think the guys that we'd be eyeing to come back around would be Pekovic. Wesley Matthews as a 3-point shooter. Luol Deng can go very late, so I'm not putting much of a premium on him. We're at the 75th spot. Nikolai Pekovic coming off there, so I think that's mainly because this guy is auto-picking. That's another thing to keep an eye on. If you do the average pick, you can see who he might be picking. He probably ended up with Andrew Bynum here, yeah, just because that's who Yahoo had ranked next. So I didn't have to worry about taking a guy like Matthews just because I knew that he wouldn't be selected by that guy. In terms of the wheeling thing that I was talking about before, where we're looking for someone to come back around. Yeah, I think the 2 guys we'd be looking at here would be Wesley Matthews and Enes Kanter. I'm actually kind of leaning towards Kanter here, just because he's primed to have a big season now that he's back from injury. A very, very solid big man without as much baggage as a guy like Tyson Chandler or Zach Randolph. Randolph just has 0 defensive stats, so he's kind of out of the question. We could use another guy who can block, and I think Kanter's going to fit that best. The reason I'm deferring to him over Matthews is Matthews doesn't shoot very well from the field, but also because there's a lot more guys who can contribute in threes down here. Not Kevin Martin, he's out for a while, but O.J. Mayo hopefully coming back around. Joe Johnson, Danny Green, guys like that will still be there, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and take the higher upside guy in Enes Kanter. And now we've got our big men pretty well rounded out, with guys who I think can have breakout years alongside our very solid guards. We can definitely take a premium off of the forwards and centers positions just because we've got that pretty settled. I think guys we could look to come back around again. O.J. Mayo, we'll go ahead and separate him here just so we can keep an eye on him in this little queue. O.J. Mayo, I'm not a big fan on Eric Gordon. Watching him, we used to go and watch him, the Clippers, when they were terrible. And Eric Gordon, there's no doubt that he's talented. It's just he's soft. That's all it is to it. He's not going to play a lot, just because when he does end up somewhat injured, he's going to sit out rather than playing through it. Now, it probably seems like it's easy for me to say sitting here behind a computer, but he just doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would put in that effort to try and stay healthy or to play through that pain. Let's see here. So our next pick is going to be in like the mid-90s range. We had Wesley Matthews, O.J. Mayo, in terms of guys who can shoot threes. Danny Green, Gordon Hayward, Paul Pierce would probably be a pretty solid pickup if we could get him to come back around. Yeah, that's who we'd be eyeing. I think we can get at least one of those guys. I don't even mind a J.R. Smith pick there, just because he should be able to come back relatively soon, but we'll see if that even comes back around. Minor run on big men here with Zach Randolph and Marcin Gortat coming off. Randolph being a very solid contributor. As a Clippers fan, I refuse to take him though, just because the way he muscles up Blake Griffin, it's pretty despicable. Not to let my fandom get in the way, but I just don't have much respect for the guy. He is a very talented ball player, but doing all those cheap shots and stuff, it's a little disrespectful. I don't know why he's saying Doe here. There goes my man Hayward, I see. Yeah, we were targeting him as well. I'm sure everybody else was. O.J. Mayo going to Tyreek Evans, surprisingly, being selected. Tyreek already, he's probably already on his way back from the injury, but the fact that he's coming off the bench, who knows? That could be the spark that he needs. Not really being the man, being able to just kind of defer to other people. But I'd prefer to have someone who's got a starting spot locked up. Let's see here. Danny Granger is someone who could definitely shoot some threes. But again, that's a muddled situation. And then talking about muddled situations, Paul Pierce is. I haven't talked about the Brooklyn lineup yet. Talked about a stacked team. They're, despite being so stacked, I think they're kind of flying under the radar here. People are expecting them to kind of be a third or fourth competitor. I don't see how they don't end up competing for a title here. It's one thing to have a collection of talent. It's another thing to have a collection of veteran talent. That's really tough to come by. And Pierce, Garnett, Darren Williams, Joe Johnson on a lesser part are going to be terrific leaders. And then having a guy like Brook Lopez, who's arguably the most talented guy on the team, who can just kind of play. I don't know if he's really the leadership type from everything I've seen out of him. It doesn't seem so much like it. It seems more like he's kind of sit back and defer kind of guy. But he's just so talented and so big that that'll definitely pay off for him. I really like the Nets' chances this year. I get a kick out of the Bill Simmons, and I don't know if you've listened to their podcast, the BS Report. They were discussing that they should just go by the Brooklyn, or just Brooklyn, and I think that'd be incredible. The Nets is kind of a really stupid nickname. Zach Lowe did an article about it, about the team's nicknames, and it is definitely the worst. Like, it's just an item that is on a basketball court. How stupid is that? But it's the world we live in. So hopefully something like that can change. And plus, having a guy like Jay-Z that's the face of the franchise, it really lends some credence to that. All right, let's see who's coming back around. So Jameer Nelson was selected. It seems a little early for him. Definitely could warrant that selection, but I don't know. The Magic team has a lot of very good pieces. It's just not a very good team. Jameer's just a really terrible field goal shooter. So you have to be able to make up for that. We can take a look at it. I believe that is actually the guy who selected Dwight. So maybe that's why he's just kind of counting on the big men. Yeah, he's got more than enough to make up for it with Anthony Davis, Al Horford, and Dwight Howard. I'm a little surprised. I guess he just gave up on free throw percentage. That is kind of the only way you can go. And he will. I don't see how I could ever compete with a team like this in field goal percentage, but I know that I'm going to beat him in free throws. So there's that. Jimmy Butler is probably another guy I should have been targeting, as well as DeMar DeRozan. We don't have a shooting guard at this point. Victor Oladipo as well. But hopefully Wesley Matthews can come back. At 94, that would be just otherworldly value. And that's all we're looking for here. We're looking for a guy who can shoot some threes. Let's go back to my team. Looking for a guy who can shoot some threes, since we don't really have much there. Dirk and Chris Paul can, but that's not really their calling. But a guy like Wesley Matthews, I think, could be a perfect fit. I don't want to put too much stock into that, just because I don't know that he's going to come to us. Let's see what the other teams have in front of us that might cause them to. This guy's got shooting guard / 3-pointers pretty much sealed, so hopefully he does not need to pick him. And then this 24C's team, probably a little more likely. Tobias Harris and James Harden are very good 3-point shooters. But he needs big men. I don't know if it's tough to think out other people's reasoning, but I don't see why either of them would need to take Matthews. I think it would be a detraction for their team. If this winner team had selected him, they ended up not. They picked Carlos Boozer. If they had selected him, I definitely would have been trying to make a trade with him, just because his team has way too many 3-point shooters. Let's bring him back up. Yeah, Paul George can shoot threes. Nicholas Batum is a tremendous 3-point shooter. Rudy Gay, now that he's got his eye surgery, and Klay Thompson, he just has no reason to ever need to pick another 3-point shooter. He'll definitely be the winner in 3-point shots. I don't know about what else. His big men are pretty weak. He's got Klay Thompson playing as forward and Jeff Green playing his power forward position. And look at this. We got Matthews to come back. His average pick is 71 in these things. I don't see why he's slipping this far. With these things, I'm always a little worried that I've missed a injury update or something, when someone falls this far. So I'll usually go ahead and Google it. I'm doing that on my phone right now. Just type his name real quick, make sure that there isn't some sort of news that I missed that everyone else seems to be in on. No, nothing's coming up. So going to go ahead and pick him and be very happy about that. All right, so again, we'll be coming back around the horn here. Looks like this Bucko Man guy did end up showing up. He's probably not so happy with the fact that he ended up with Andrew Bynum so early. But having a pairing of Kevin Durant, being able to pick first and end up with Kevin Durant kind of makes everything feel a little bit better. Durant, Sanders, Wade is a very good start. I think it kind of tailed off there. Picking up a guy like Brandon Jennings, Andrew Bynum, not exactly what you're looking to do. All right, so the pick will be coming back to us. Danny Granger is very enticing here. I don't know if that's really who we need. We'll see who Yahoo's got picked here, just so we can kind of keep an eye on what we might be able to get. I think Gerald Henderson's probably a guy that we'd be wanting. Surprisingly now, Charlotte actually has some talent, and he won't be so relied upon to score, but he can score in bunches. We can also sort by 3-pointers made here, just to see what we can look forward to, because we're going to need another 3-point shooter in our next pick. Kyle Korver is probably the best case scenario, and seeing as how there's not much else here. J.R. Smith might actually be a value here. He's just outside of our top 100, and this is pick 99. It's right about where we'd want to be able to take him, and I think the three-point shooting is what we need right now. He also fills the small forward. I think the only caveat here is now Iman Shumpert is actually looking pretty darn solid. His preseason has been very good, and JR has the suspension kind of stuff looming over him. I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and take Gerald Henderson. He's a little less dangerous than a guy like Danny Granger, and we need a small forward at this point. We'll hope to wheel a guy like Kyle Korver. We'll go ahead and set him aside. J.R. Smith. Boy, Marcus Thornton even, just as a three-point specialist. This is what I was talking about, though, before when it came to three-point shooting being pretty easy to come by. These guys are all putting up right around 150, 140. And let's bring up the people who have been drafted. People like Curry and Anderson are a little ridiculous in their numbers, but everyone else is pretty close to that field, the 150 to the 160, 140. These guys are up in the 180 range, but it's not going to put you so far behind that you can't come back. It's just a lot easier to find those people, and they have a lot less detractions. So, for instance, say you wanted to catch up in blocks, sure, Bismack Biyombo is here, but he also only scored 386 points last year. So, you'd have to find a way to really make up for that. There are some big proponents of his. I know Pete Nice over at Rasball was very high on him. Wrote an article specifically about the Bismack Biyombo situation. I don't see it. But if you want to pick up guys, even DeAndre Jordan is primed to have a big year. But just look at that free throw percentage. There are so much bigger detractions with these guys, whereas guys like Kyle Korver, just very solid across the board. He's going to get you those threes, and that's about it. But at least you know what you're getting, whereas these guys are going to get you those blocks, but it's going to kill you in other categories. Now you have to reevaluate your team just to accommodate them. Let's go ahead and bring this back up. Spencer Hawes could be a very good pick coming back around. He shoots some threes, but he's going to have a big role out in Philadelphia, and when it comes to fantasy basketball, sometimes role is more important than pure talent. Now Hawes is somewhat talented, but not enough to really lead a team. But it would be worth enough. There he goes. Speak of the devil. Yeah, somebody else saw that potential, went ahead and jumped on him. Let's see here. There's been a lot of shooting guards, small forwards went off. That's good for us. That's kind of what we were expecting. Kevin Martin, I'm a little surprised to see come off this early, just because he did sustain an injury this preseason, and it's not looking so good. I don't know if I would take a chance on him this year at all. Let somebody else take on that risk. Same story with Eric Gordon, just because, as I mentioned before, very injury prone. Anderson Varejao, I think that's some very good value there if you can get him in the 100 range. He's not going to play the full year. It's pretty much fact. But the idea behind drafting him is the fact that he's going to contribute heavily during those games that he was here. Similar to how I was talking about Kyle Lowry before, he was just an incredible roto producer during those games that he actually did play last year. He was probably top 10 or something like that when it comes to per game value in rotisserie leagues. But that's not what you play for. You play for the full season. But the idea behind drafting him is that if you can get a good enough value, he'll be able to contribute during those games that he is here, and then you find the hot waiver wire pickup who's a big man, and you finish the season with that guy. So now you've got sort of let's say you picked up a guy like Thiago Splitter, who will probably be pretty good, but not amazing. And now you combine that with, you take out 15 of his games, and you supply them with 15, or how about 30, Anderson Varejao games. Now you've got a much improved version of Thiago Splitter. You've got a guy who puts up a lot more points and a lot more rebounds compared to what he normally would. I like having a guy like Anderson Varejao on my team, just because he is such a roto stud. And it's okay to take those injury risks late, because a lot of fantasy basketball, the winners a lot of the time are the people who are just able to string together solid waiver wire pickups rather than just outright dominate your draft. Let's see here. Danny Granger, a lot of injury riddled people coming off here. J.R. Smith got selected. I think we're going to kind of have to settle for a guy like Marcus Thornton. He is kind of one note, but that one note is pretty good, and he's going to see a lot of playing time out in Sacramento. He was disappointing last year, but I don't see them going with the Isaiah Thomas, Grievous Vasquez lineup as their backcourt all that often. It's just not good enough. It's just not good enough defensively. Another thing to keep an eye on here would be picking up Reggie Jackson at one of these two spots would be extremely good value as well, for a similar reason to how picking Anderson Varejao is good. Reggie Jackson came out right now in this preseason, had a game where it was like Russell Westbrook numbers, and he's not going to put up Russell Westbrook numbers, but he's going to put up something somewhat close, because there's not going to be much attention on him, and he's going to be able to spread the ball out with some very talented scorers around him. Getting that first month worth of him, and then ditching him for the next best point guard off the waiver wire is going to be a lot better than picking up a guy like Avery Bradley or Brandon Knight. I really like the upside with Reggie Jackson, so I think we'll go ahead and throw him in the queue. I think I'd prefer to take him here. I know that we've got assists pretty solidly done here, but it can't hurt to get off to a good lead. And there's probably not a better value at the point guard position left than him. It's a pretty steep drop off afterwards to a guy like Bradley. Let's see who else we've got here. Yeah, if you think any one of those guys is going to have a better season than Reggie Jackson does during this first month, I'd be pretty shocked. I'd love to hear a reasoning behind it, but I just don't see it. Let's go ahead and bring this back up. So yeah, ideally this turnaround would go Reggie Jackson, which we were able to get, Thiago Splitter being selected. We'll take Reggie Jackson, and then just cross our fingers that Marcus Thornton can come back. If we sort by average pick, you can see some of the guys that our opponents would be most likely to take. Bucko Man, he's no longer on the auto selection, so he wouldn't be forced to take Manu Ginobili and Amari Stoudemire. Let's get this back. Yeah. So we'll just cross our fingers that neither of these guys need a three-point shooter. I believe we went through these. Well, we didn't before, but Bucknut, there's no reason for him to be selecting really a bench player just yet. And Bucko Man, he does need a shooting guard, which is a little disappointing. He can move Wade down there if he'd prefer. This is probably one of those situations where I should have looked back. Oh, he picked Reddick. That's good. One of those situations where I should have looked at what these rosters needed before selecting, because I don't know that he would have picked Reggie Jackson over, or he might have picked up Reggie Jackson over one of these guys. But we'll see. Let's see here. Yeah. So I think Marcus Thornton is going to be very good value at a 123 pick. I don't want to count my don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. But yeah, Alex Len being selected instead. We'll go ahead and slam him. If we need 3-pointers, we have a very solid production from it. Sorry, the major happenings in the Packer game here. Pretty boneheaded play, turning the ball over after what appears to be somewhat of a blocked punt. Yeah, and then they failed to recover it. That's pretty much been the Packers' season this year, is just kind of boneheaded plays. John Kuhn tried to scoop it up and instead just kind of tapped it, and then the Ravens jumped on it. It's been pretty injury and just boneheaded play made. But yeah, don't want to discuss too much of that, just a little frustration brewing on this side of the screen. The draft's kind of winding down here, so I'm going to try and round out the team. We've only got 2 selections left coming up here at 142, and then there'll be 4 slots in between, and then we'll be done. Overall, I think we've put together a very good team. I'd love to hear the reactions from you all again. Feel free to leave comments on the site, RotoGold.com, or we have the YouTube channel set up where this is being hosted. Let's look forward a little to what we might want to try and get out of this. Ben McLemore would be ideal, just as a hedge against the fact that Marcus Thornton doesn't score all that much. And then, let's see here, we could probably use a big man as well to help round out our team. I can't help but think that Omar Ashik, excuse me, butchering that, running on fumes here at the end of the draft. Omar Ashik, I can't help but think he's going to get traded in the end. Daryl Morey is smarter than to just kind of leave an asset that big rotting on the bench while Dwight plays. And if he does end up getting traded to a team like the Wizards, who now Emeka Okafor is out for the foreseeable future, if something like that were to happen, that's best case scenario. But if he were to get traded to a team like that and just have his reign, that's such a much better pick than taking a guy like Samuel Dalembert, who you can more than likely pick up off the waiver wire. I'd rather have a guy who's got a very good chance at busting through on an off chance than a guy who's just going to put together a ho-hum season. Let's run through our stats as well, see if there's anything we really need. We've got assists pretty well covered. We've got field goal percentage, I think, shored up after we started off a little weak. Free throw percentage will be fine, just because we've got solid big men and very good free throw shooting guards. It's a little worrisome seeing Blake Griffin here, but I think we've made up for it. 3-pointers, we're doing our best to fix, just because we don't have too much production there, but I don't think you need all that much to compete. We'll be able to find guys off the waiver wire if we need to, who are able to shoot, or we can always try and make a trade. Our points are going to be very okay. I don't think we need to worry about that. We've got guys who everyone here is going to score, and a lot of them are going to score in bunches. Guys like Gerald Henderson, Dirk, Blake, David West as well. I'm not worried about points. We don't have a guy like Carmelo, which is a bit disappointing. You know, we don't have someone who's just going to night in and night out score 25, but we do have a lot of guys who are going to score 18 or 19 every night. And if Dirk can come back around, then we really don't have to worry about that. Assists will be fine. I'm not worried the least bit. As well as steals, those two categories. Just having Mike Conley and Chris Paul, it makes you breathe a little easier. Blocks, Blake is going to be solid there, and I think Jonas and Enos will as well. Our guards, we don't really have any that are going to contribute there. I believe, let's see here, the shooting guards, people who led in blocks last year. Let's see here. Yeah, not a whole lot. Nobody on our team, I mean. So, let's see who led in point guards too. It's good to kind of know the guys who led in these obscure positions or in these obscure stats for their positions. Eric Bledsoe, is a blocking machine, as well as John Wall. Neither of our guys are going to show up there, so it's good to know about those guys though, just because if you pick a guy like John Wall, sure, he's not going to block as much as a center does, but it allows you to pick a center who doesn't block as much because you're getting those extra stats from your point guard. Alrighty, it's coming around here. Again, we're eyeing Ben McLemore. I think that's the best case scenario. I'm a big fan of having positions covered, sort of like in fantasy football where you have a running back and their backup as a handcuff. Picking Marcus Thornton there and being able to end up with Ben McLemore would be ideal, because no matter who ends up starting and playing a majority of the minutes, we will have that covered. And then whoever becomes the hot waiver wire pickup, we're able to just ditch the other guy. Having people who you're not afraid to get rid of right away is huge, because you're going to want to make a waiver wire pickup. It's where a lot of leagues are won. And if you're dead set on keeping all of your bench players, it's just not feasible. You're going to psych yourself out. I've found myself doing that every once in a while, every few seasons, where I'll pick some guys who I'm like, yes, those guys are going to bust out. And then I'm afraid to drop them for the guy who actually does, and you've seen it, but you're like, well, I don't know, I'm hoping that they will. Having a guy like Marcus Thornton on the bench now, I'm not so worried if he ends up not getting a lot of minutes, and someone busts out like an Avery Bradley goes off for the first week. I'm able to just instinctually drop him, pick up Avery Bradley, and we're set. Just a little thing to think about. All right, so unfortunately Ben McLemore did get picked. We don't get that chance. Let's take a look at who else we might want here. Bargnani's a high upside guy. I think he's a much better fit in New York. And he's got a pretty good slot open for him, given how Amari is pretty much never going to play. I think having the focus away from him on a guy like Carmelo, and then when J.R. Smith comes back, it'll do wonders for him. I think he's a guy we could really see ourselves picking here, just because he'll be able to fill in as a big man, and then if we need extra threes, he can come in as well. His field goal percentage is very subpar, but again, I think we've done a good job in fixing that on our team. Let's see here. Anyone else that we should be targeting? Not a whole lot. There's a pretty significant drop off here. We'll probably go ahead and take a shot on a rookie like Otto Porter, or a guy who's just got a much bigger role like Avery Bradley. We'll see if we really need to. A lot of good words going around here. We'll go ahead and throw a comment out. Best of luck. Don't want to say best of love. That would be embarrassing. Always good to create some camaraderie amongst the league, so that when you start making fun of each other later on, it's not so hurtful. Let's see here. A little surprised at how late Harrison Barnes is still here. We'll go ahead and put him aside, and then Bargnani. I think that would be a great way to finish this draft, would be to pick up. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take Barnes. I think it's a lot more likely that Bargnani comes back around than it is for Barnes too. You can see the league rankings, like the Yahoo ones. Yeah, probably not going to be singled out, Bargnani. We'll go ahead and take Barnes and hope to get him to come back around. Barnes is definitely probably one of the most talented people. Excuse me. He's definitely one of the most talented people left here. It's just a matter of, is he going to have enough opportunity? I think so. I think they're going to make way for him to produce. They don't want to leave someone who they've invested that many resources into, just kind of hanging out on the bench. One more pick, and we should be able to get Bargnani here. Yeah, so Harrison Barnes, I think he's got a good season in front of him. All right, so we'll go ahead and close it out here with Andrea Bargnani. I appreciate you tuning in if you've made it this far. Let me know, again, what you think. I'll go ahead and do some updates on this team throughout the season if you'd like to hear more about how it's going. You can also probably be able to find it, Yahoo Public League 30694. It's one of the pro leagues. But yeah, I enjoyed doing this, enjoyed just kind of talking my way through it. Sorry for the rambling at times, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to see in the future, and best of luck to you this season. Okay, check out RotoGold.com as well. It'd be a shame if I didn't mention that. Have a good one.